I can't keep a job, and I blame networking. I've had 4 jobs in 4 years, and I blame networking. I receive a call over the last several years, probably once every quarter, for someone saying, "Are you interested in something?" And I blame networking. I have left multiple jobs that I've loved to go into something I did not know a whole lot of because I've trusted the people who have put my name out there because of networking. I've been with the company for 22 years, and I've never been happier or more satisfied than I am right now, and I blame networking. What I want you to walk away with from today are all your eggs in one basket. For those that make decisions about your next potential move, the decision makers, can be contingent on who you know and how long you've known them and the relationship you have with them. We kid ourselves when we think that's not the case. I'm going to get it based off of skills. No. It's not based off of connections. It's based off of network. And we'll talk a little bit about it. You have to drive your own career. You must drive your own career. Opportunity seldom labels itself. Nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Okay, we're ready for you." If you're waiting for that tap, you're going to wait a long time. It is dependent on people that you know. Once you start to build your network, and I think this is where some of the hardest parts when it comes to networks is that people, it's the starting. Where do you start? But once you start to build it, it's going to build exponentially. Think of it as if it's a spider web. And as you start to make these connections, your network starts to build. And like money in your pocket, it's not going to grow. Money in a bank will. Your network will start doing some of the work for you. And we'll talk about some of those examples. The other part is we think in terms of this hierarchy. If I take care of my manager takes care of me, I should be in pretty good shape because our managers work extremely hard. And as long as I'm connected with my manager, or they're connected with their manager, or their manager's manager, I look at it as an up and down hierarchy. That's the old traditional approach. You have to talk to people over here, the side, peers, managers, people in other lines of businesses. There's someone within Toastmasters who I've never met before. Joins the club, says, "Hey, this is kind of cool. Oh, you need an officer? Sure, I'll join there." And all of a sudden, I'm looking at him as a leader, and I've never met him before. But yet, I've got some things set up, thinking in my head of what can I do for him that can help me. Because networking is not just about you. You're going to learn that networking is about the connection. It's about building a relationship. The last thing is, when it comes to networking, it is not as hard as you think. And we're going to talk about how easy this process can be. So how important is networking? Why is it important? Let's start with an example of how many people are on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm not going to be asking you for a friend of me. Me. We had someone come in from BC, and they said, they came in a couple years ago, and they said the average number of friends that a college person has on Facebook is how much? How many?
1,500.
2,000, 1,500. That's a lot of friends. 483. Guess how many Facebook users are out there right now?
200 million.
845 million as of a couple months ago. How many people on LinkedIn? 34 million. So I saw some hands go up that says, "Hey, I like to social network with LinkedIn, with Facebook, from other things that are out there." Twitter, maybe. So you have all of these social network tools, and we have this societal willingness to network behind a computer. That's anonymous network. Is it network? called social networking, but is it really networking?
It can be.
It can be. If you're using it as a tool to network, if you're using it to expand your connections, you're using it to network. If you're using it on the professional front, a lot of people use LinkedIn to catch up with people based off of their expertise, based off of their background. As we had talked about, if you were here in some of the resume writing or interviewing, if you are going to use those spaces and you want to use it for professional purposes, you've got to go all in. You can't just list your job and say, I'm good. Here's how long I've been doing that job. It comes across as lazy, and that is not networking. If you do that and start sending out connections, and you get a few, that's not networking. Because nobody knows what your background is, and if it's going to remain anonymous, that's not networking. We have this desire to connect with people through the keyboard. But one of the biggest gaps is we have this hesitation to have this face-to-face conversation besides someone who's our manager or our manager's manager. Sometimes we're afraid to go across the hall or down the hall to speak to somebody because we don't know who they are. To pick up the phone and call somebody in a completely different area because they don't know who I am. Why would I want to do something like that? We're going to explain why you want to do something. There's an article from Harvard Business Review on networking, and they mention a person in the first paragraph, who's very famous, by the name of William Dawes. Anyone know who William Dawes is? You know who William Dawes is? Okay. Who is he? Okay. William Dawes is an afterthought. Anyone ever hear of Paul Revere? Paul Revere went north. William Dawes went south. No pun intended. Because he networked. He didn't just say, oh, the British are coming. He said, the British are coming. Can you tell someone else that they're coming? And he went that path, and he truly networked with the people he was connecting with. And now there's a poem right now. And everyone knows who Paul Revere is, even though they did the same thing. It's part of the power of networking. So let's talk about, we keep hearing this word network. What is it? What do you think networking is? How would you define networking?
In terms of when you said reach out and connecting, just being aware that somebody else is there and knowing that there's a resource, knowing that there's different avenues and that there's different ways of experiencing things, finding solutions, and that's how I got it.
So connections. People that are there to be your solutions. People there to put out fire drills for you. What else? Okay? It's a give and take. It's a give and take. It is, I'm going to network with you, you can network with me. I had a conversation with somebody this morning because I had some questions for her. She doesn't work at this company. And we were talking, and I had questions about the publishing business. And she has recently published a book, and we talked about that. She then turned the tables and asked me questions about professional speaking. We're in completely different fields. We were sharing information. It was an extremely useful conversation. It lasted 10 minutes. That is networking. Connections, subject matter expertise, knowing somebody is there for you, integration points, bridges. Nowhere have I said job shopping yet. But I bet many of you walked in here to say, how can I network to get my next job? It should be an output of the input to the process. It should not be your sole purpose of networking. I ran into somebody the other day who asked to sit down and mentor with me. The last time we mentored was about a year ago. He showed up on my doorstep a year ago and he said, I'm so frustrated I didn't get this last job. I said, who did you prepare with? What homework did you do to go there? And they said, well, I spoke to this person, this person, and this person. I said, when did you do that? They said, a week after the posting went up. And I said, so did everybody else. That's not networking. That's cramming. So you know what he's been doing all year? Going down the hall, meeting with people that are going to be making the decisions for him, doing his homework, offering his input, getting to know the people there, they're getting to know him. And it's not all about job shopping because he's taking that information and he's bringing it back. And he's learned about other pieces of the business. That is networking. So we spoke about this this time around, and he said, I really feel good about my chances to get in. But the year wasn't all about job shopping. The year was about building your business acumen, broadening your acumen, making sure that you're ready for whatever that next step should be. And I said, if you don't get this job, guess what? You've learned a ton that can help you get another job. If your sole purpose is job shopping, you're not networking right. What networking is learning how to maneuver through the complexity of any organization that's out there. There's big organizations, there's small, complex organizations. If you're dealing with small organizations, there might be complexity in what's your role. You might have so many hats on in that role. What are you going to do? Networking helps you to do that. Understanding people that are a subject matter expert in the field, whether it's where you're working or not where you're working, is still going to be helpful for you to reach out. I was sitting in one of my departments, and I turned to my manager and I said, why are the reports never on time, and why are they never run? And he said, I don't know. Go on a 3-month task force and find out. 2 years later, still being in that role, I was overseeing reporting and incentives. During that time, our company was taken over. We went from 3 sites to 10 sites. We had multiple iterations of the incentive plan, and I had no choice but to network. There were 5 of us on the team. 5 of us couldn't carry through an organization that was 3,000 people strong unless we networked. We had to talk to the managers to make sure that they had a full understanding. We had to talk to HR to make sure that recommendations we were making were legal, and making sure that they could be accepted by the associates. We wanted to make sure that the people who we were going to put these incentive plans and reports in front of can understand, and that it meets their needs. We had to talk to a lot of people. We didn't have a choice. There was value to that. But during that time, they said, hey, there's an opportunity in Rhode Island for you. You can be a site leader and oversee an entire site. There'd be 2 of you doing it. You'd have 750 people. They would have 750 people. Are you interested? At the time, I said, sure, it makes sense. Yeah. So I drove down there. I spent 8 hours in interviews. And during that time, they said, great interviews. Love your answers. Love what we're doing. We're going to get back to you. And they ended up getting back to me. There were 3 of us left. When it was all said and done, guess what number I was for 2 positions?
1.
The number's not going down. It was 3. They said, I liked your interviews. I loved everything you had. The 2 people who got the job had 16 years worth of experience within the business, so that didn't hurt them. But I was okay because I liked your ideas. I liked the action. I liked what you were going to bring to our business, but I had no idea who you are. Companies had just merged. I said, I don't know who you are. I don't even know who your manager is. I don't even know who your manager's manager is. I don't know what you do. They said you didn't get the job. I don't know who you are. I don't know who your manager is. I don't know you. So we went with where our comfort zone was. And I said, what will it take to get this job? What feedback do you have for me besides, I don't know who you are? And they said, I don't have a lot. And it was very eye-opening to me to say, I've need to know their job a little bit better. They need to know me. They need to know not only my skills, they need to know what I'm capable of, and that comes through networking. So I said, can we spend some time together? Not now while you're giving me feedback on the interview, but a couple of weeks from now. So we spent a little bit of time together talking about what I can do to improve, but more importantly, talking about me, talking about him. And we chatted for a half hour. That was it. We established a relationship. He has come up to Maine multiple times, and he always stops in my office and we say hi. We had a connection because networking is building a relationship, not just checking off a box. So as we built this relationship, he gave me some great feedback. We said we'll chat at another time. And 6 months later, he calls me back and he says, Tom, one of the people didn't work out. The job is yours, no interview needed. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. And the reason I did that is 4 days earlier, I had overheard a conversation that we had some attrition problems and people were leaving the company in droves. And there was a discussion being tossed around of possible task force. Drive your own career. I said, sounds like something pretty good. I've been in this role for a couple of years. Hey, how about you set up this task force and I lead it? And I said, you want it, you got it. A one-person task force for 3,500 people with an attrition rate of 45%. The value of networking became very critical at that point because I had no choice. But yet, this person who I now have met, he's turned me down. We've established a relationship. I've turned him down. But yet we still have a relationship. Because that's what networking is all about. It's about the relationship that's built. But the value of networking now is I'm leading this task force, one person. I had no choice but to talk to the managers, the people. Why are you leaving? Why are you staying? What are your managers doing to you? What are they not doing that you want them to do? Talking to HR, human resources, talking to other lines of business who are having the same problem, talking to lines of business who aren't having that problem. I had to have these conversations or I would not have succeeded. We dropped in less than a year the attrition from 45% into the 20s. I said we. I had nothing to do. I did not solve attrition. We, the network, solved attrition. Networking, the value means I now have connections. I have shown success because of these networks. I have people I can reach out to help put out fire drills. I have people to go to when I have questions and someone says a policy drives this and I say I've got people I can talk to. One of my main responsibilities now is just getting roadblocks out of the way of the people who work with me. It helps with context. The value of networking is building that relationship. So one of the people I had reached out to through this task force called me up and said, Tom, we have an opportunity for you. I said, great, tell me about it. They said, it's about governance. I said, great, I'll take it. And then I hung up and looked up the word. I had no idea what governance was. But she said, it's a startup position. We need it built. And you have a reputation of either cleaning up messes or building these things. We want you to do it. And through networking, I got to appreciate and respect this woman so much. She is one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. And I would follow her in. So 6 months later, my first performance appraisal, we sit down, and she says, let me share a story with you. So she says she gets this call from her mentor, who said, we just sat around a table and talked about you. And your name came up, and your manager did this. Didn't say a word. Or all your eggs in one basket. if the person you trust the most is your manager to say all the great things about you, what if they're absent that day? What if this person had put on a front and didn't like that person? What if they were having a bad day? We don't know the reasons why, but the reasons are irrelevant. The point is, she had the opportunity to talk about this person and didn't say a word. She just sat there. So the mentor said, I have a mentor relationship with her. Let me tell you all the great things that she's done. She's got some opportunities. We'll talk about those as well. And someone says, oh, she does that? Yeah, I know her. I've worked with her in the past. I've worked with her team. I've done this. And all of a sudden the conversation starts burning. But if you are putting everything in your manager's hands, you're considering that networking. It's not. You have to expand your breadth of networking. So she then says to me, and I'm sitting around the table, there's 15 people there. Of these 15, how many do you know? I said, oh, a lot of them are from the old company. I know 12 of them. She said, you know their names. How many of them do you truly know? Maybe 9? She said, of those 9, how many of them could accurately and adequately talk about what you've been able to accomplish in the current state? Not from 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but now. I said maybe 3. 15 people sitting around the table, 3 know me. 15 people are making decisions about my future, 12 of them don't know me. It's not very helpful. Her only words were, you have some work to do. So what I decided to do was to create my own rotational mentor program. For 30 minutes a month, once a month, I'm going to meet with someone who's 2 levels above me. Why 2 levels? Why did I pick 2 levels?
Because the person that's directly above you knows you better than the person 2 levels above you.
Okay. So there's still a little bit of familiarity right there, if it's only 1 level. I like to call that a peer meeting. That's not networking. If you're talking with people you are familiar with anyway, or you have connections with anyway, it's not really networking. Call it bonding, call it something else, but in reality you're not networking. That's a traditional approach of, I'm going to go to my manager's manager, and my manager's manager. I had a mentor, and we sat down, and I said, okay, great, we're going to network. Who do you want to network with? And she said, I want to network with my manager's manager. I said, that's your job. That's not networking. And she said, well, who else can I mentor with or network with? And I pointed the question right back to her and said, give me another name so you could expand yourself within this company. And she said, then I'll take my manager's manager because they're in a completely different site. And I said, you're getting closer, you're getting warmer, but you're still not networking. That's called job responsibility. That's a traditional approach. You have to flatten that organization out to say, I can speak to anyone in this organization and that will help me. We have this fear of walking down the hall or walking across the hall or even making a phone call because we say, I don't have time. I don't know who the person is. They don't know who I am. The reason I picked 2 levels above me is, 1, I wanted to ensure that I really stretched myself when it came to networking. I wanted it to truly do some exponential work for me. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about the business at a completely different level than what I had been hearing language-wise, terminology-wise, strategy-wise. And it worked. I was getting completely different conversations because there's a different depth to the conversation, and it made me open my eyes. Now, on my monthly rotation, I'm kind of bebopping between a person I don't know who's a level to 2 levels above me, somewhere in between, because I now know I had to break out of my comfort zone to be able to do that. You need to be able to break out of your comfort zone so you're not behind a keyboard just networking that way. And we'll talk about how you go about doing it. So we said in the beginning of this thing, which I've been doing now for about 3 years, I said, how do I start? She said, go to HR. Why would anyone want to go to human resources to start their network? They know everyone. They know a broad spectrum of the business. It forces you to think outside of your line of business, your expertise, and say, who else should I meet with? Because every networking session you have should end with the question, who else should I meet with? And they should give you a name or 2 or 3. Think about it. Every time I've met with somebody, I've asked that question, I get 1, 2, or 3 names. I have 3 years worth of names on my list right now. I'm only doing it once a month. Because it's not as time consuming as you probably think it is. So I meet with HR. And they say, well, you should meet with our leadership development person. And I meet with them and I say, okay. So you have these 2 people, and I checked off the box. I networked with them. Yes. And Kathy says 6 months later, so, how's it going with Ben and Ted? I said, what do you mean, how's it going with Ben and Ted? I met with them 6 months ago. She said, that's not networking. Networking is building a relationship. And it doesn't mean you're meeting with them every single month, and all of a sudden you meet with 1 for a half hour, and then 1 for a half hour in the next month, and you're meeting with 2, and the next you're meeting with 3. No, it just means keeping the relationship going. Send them a note every once in a while. Pick up the phone and spend 5 minutes with them. Spend 2 minutes with them. So I said, okay. Called Ben up. And Ben says to me, I'm so glad you called. This is fantastic. And we chatted for a couple minutes. I said, I love my new job. Remember, I wasn't job shopping before. But yet this job came in front of me. And I said, I love my manager. And he said, I'm the one who gave him your name. And then it hit me. My network was working for me. So then I call the other person, because my manager would get mad at me if I didn't call the other person. I called them up and he picked up the phone and he said, Tom, this is fantastic. And he ended the conversation with a quote I will never forget. You made my day. I called him and he said, you made my day. Because we talked about what I've been able to accomplish over the last year. And in the last 6 months since our last conversation, it was a good catch-up conversation. So I asked each of them, who should I meet with? The 3rd person I met with is the person I ended up getting the next job I had with. And I spoke to him, and this is where it clicked that networking wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Because after a half hour of being intrigued with all the things that he was talking about his business, I said, I can't thank you enough, Bob, for the time. This is fantastic. And he said, stop. Don't thank me. I want to thank you for reaching out to me. Senior leaders love talking about their business. And then I realized they do. I had a networking session this morning with someone I haven't talked to in 4 years. Why would I do something like that?
Still find the link.
I'm reconnecting and rebuilding a link.
I was going to say, building a link, but it's funny how we...
Great minds.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm reinventing myself in their eyes. Because when they're sitting around a table talking about me, or something pops up and they might think I have something, first of all, I wasn't fresh in their mind. But they also have a snapshot of who I was 4 years ago, good, bad, or indifferent, from 4 years ago. I am not the same person I was 4 years ago. good, better, and different. And so I'm talking to her about this. I haven't talked to her in 4 years yet. A couple weeks ago, you may have received an article I sent up here to you guys after the interviewing section on value propositions within the interview. This woman, who I used to work for 4 years ago, used to always say, "What's your value proposition?" And I'd present to her, and she says, "What's the value proposition?" And after a while, it finally connected with me. I need to talk about the value proposition. So this article came out, and I instantly thought of her. And I sent a note saying, "Hey, you used to always ask us about this. I thought you might find this interesting. And I look forward to our connection in a couple weeks." Keeping the relationship alive. She had so much of an impact, it's actually a chapter in one of my books on value proposition. So she had an impact, such an impact on me, that I was able to write it as a chapter in my book, yet I hadn't talked to her in 4 years. Disconnect. And I caught up with her today. You know how she ended the call? First of all, "I hear you're in a speech contest. Make sure you update me on how it's going. And then call me in a couple months from now. Let me know how it's going." Reinvent yourself with people you know, but start your networking with people you don't know, so you're breaking outside of your comfort zone. Reinvent yourself. The fourth person I met with was someone who I had worked with a few years before too, and we had an extremely good relationship. I wanted to reinvent myself with her, but I took advantage of this relationship that we had, this strong relationship, and I asked some tough questions for stuff I probably didn't want to hear. Because that's what networking is all about, is asking questions we're often afraid to ask. So I asked her, "I keep moving from position to position to position, and I'm making all lateral moves. Why can't I move up with this company?" And she said, "Because you have this reputation of cleaning up everyone else's messes. You are the doer. You are always going to get this job done, so we have you do it for us." I said, "That's great, but I can also lead those efforts too." And she said, "Yeah, but it doesn't come across that way. Here are the things you have to change to be perceived as a leader. You might be doing leadership stuff, but the perception of your leadership is different." I had to turn my communication style around. So I start talking as a leader. I start speaking about things that we've led as a team and the things that we've been able to accomplish. The networking value of these types of questions, to be able to ask these things. She has no vested interest in my growth, except to potentially do something for her in the future. But why wouldn't she give me an honest answer? Be able to use these situations for those tough questions you want to ask, because they remember you're willing to have these tough conversations. How do you start this thing? This thing we call networking. You can start with some people you haven't talked to for a while. You can start with HR. I'd love you guys to flood HR. This would be fun. But it doesn't have to be your HR. You even know who your human resource person is. Your pre-networking conversation might be with your manager. But remember, a lot of times we think in this traditional approach, so a lot of time managers think in the traditional approach, so they're going to give you someone across the hall, down the hall, or someone really close. Think outside the box. Think of some organizations you may have been part of, you are now, you've heard someone's involved in this field, reach out to them. It isn't about job shopping. It may end up being about job shopping, but you have to figure out what your goal is. And you have to know what that goal is prior to networking. So the goal should be increase your job knowledge, broaden your business acumen, learn a little bit about something you had no idea what it's all about. All of these goals are out there. You have to figure out what they are. You might want to bring some stuff back to your team, but you have to know what your goal is. If you are doing something internal and you have calendars that can connect and sync up, and you're able to see if they're occupied or not, find the appointment, find that they're open, and set up the appointment directly with a calendar appointment. Don't use an email. And within that, you can have a body of words that say, I have, believe it or not, I'm anal retentive, I have a monthly appointment, and it pops up and it says, set up your networking session. And within that body of this thing that pops up every single month, it says, my name is Tom Dowd, this is what I've been doing, here's how I was referred to you, here's somebody you might know, here's a connection, here's my goal that I'd like to accomplish. I'm looking to network. Yes, you can say, I am looking to network. Be open and honest with what you're trying to do. There's no underlying current here. We're not kidding anyone. I want to network with you. And I want to do it because I heard there might be some openings in your position, so that is job shopping. Or I'm trying to figure out the complexity of an organization that's this large. I even put in there, I do this as a rotational program for myself, self-initiated. And so they appreciate that. And when we go through this, they say, all right, well, I can do this. But by sending the appointment directly, there's usually someone who's an assistant that helps them out. They usually just click accept. They never even read it until it pops up anyway. But what happens is we send these emails to somebody and say, I am looking for time on your calendar. Are you willing to talk with me? What are their choices for responses there? Yes, no, ignore, maybe, here's a good time. Look at all those options that are out there. I send you an appointment, you have one of three options: accept, delete, or tentative. In 3 years of doing this, I've had one appointment decline. Because people like talking about their businesses. And the other part is, it's happening all around you anyway. And I learned this because as a business support manager, I had access to multiple calendars, and I was seeing these appointments popping up every single day on managers' calendar. It would say, go to lunch, go to dinner, go to drinks, phone call, networking, introductory session. I heard them called multiple things, but it was all networking. And so you're looking at this thing saying, well, if everyone else is doing this, I think I need to start doing it too, or I'm going to fall behind. So you start saying, oh, all right, I can do this. You're eliminating a couple of processes by having the emails go back and forth. Now, if the calendars aren't synced and you can't figure it out, you can't avoid that. But the key is to be open and honest when it comes to what you're trying to accomplish here. In the conversations that I've had with people, I've had fascinating conversations where they've come in and said, well, I deal with giving people at the CEO level or their direct reports feedback, and I'm like, wow. And you start having these conversations with them, but you're still sitting there saying, how do I still prepare for this thing? It's a half hour a month in the rotation. Spend 15 minutes a couple days before and write out some questions you want to ask. Remember what your goal is. Your questions should relate to that goal. You write out maybe 5 questions, I'll guarantee you won't get to 3 of them, because your conversation is going to be, you should go with the flow of the conversation. The questions should be laid out just so you're prepared in case there's some quiet points within the conversation. But you start by saying, here's who I am. If you haven't put together a 2-minute speech on who you are, it's a good time to start doing it. It doesn't mean memorize the speech. It just means get to know yourself, but be able to say it within 2 minutes. Call it your elevator speech. Can you talk about the things that you've been able to accomplish professionally, personally, within a couple minutes? And then the next question should be, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And then that goes on for about 5 minutes. So within a couple minutes and this 5 minutes, you're talking anywhere from 5 to 10. You've got 20 minutes now of questions. And a lot of the questions I ask are, what are your priorities going into this year or next year, depending on when it is? What are some ways, if one of my goals, because there's linkage between our business, part of the reasons I reached out to the person I haven't talked to in 4 years is because I realized my team and her team are probably going to get a little bit closer over the next several months. And so I wanted to be able to say, what are the linkage points between our teams? I had this perception, this is what she did. I realized this is what she did after our conversation today. And I learned a ton about her business, and I now know where the integration points are going to be. So it's important that you write these questions out so you're prepared for it. Do your homework, but think about it. 45 minutes a month, maybe 50 if you add 5 minutes because of your pop-up once a month to set up the appointment. It's all that you need in order to network. Spread out over an entire month's time once a month isn't that hard. The hardest part is doing the first couple, and then all of a sudden you start to realize your network is starting to spread out for you somewhere.
What about outside the company? Most of us will not be staying with the company, so obviously do we contact this company's HR, go with that route? How do you do it for a new company?
You have LinkedIn opportunities. And so you have people, if you're within LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can look for fields that they're involved in and possibly reach out to them. And the key is that, we were talking about this, people were walking into the room and they're saying, but how do I get in to people? If they don't have openings, they won't talk to me. And the point is, that's because you're treating it as if you're job shopping. You're not job shopping. Your question should be, what can I do to learn more about this company? Who can I talk to in this organization for 30 minutes to understand what their culture is, what the mission is? And so these are the things that you want to be asking. Are you involved in your church or clubs or things that are outside? I was leading the company loyally. I've been with this company for 22 years. I didn't want to do anything else out there. I didn't even talk to anybody. All my friends and family and everything I dealt with was usually the company, which got my wife drive her crazy during cocktail parties. And I had to really learn how to do it. Part of that, getting outside of it, was through Toastmasters. And I realized there was this whole new world. You have kids, there's a whole new world out there when you start integrating with parents. And start asking them about what they do, or ask them about some connections that you have out there. Connections are wherever you make them. Painfully shy, introverted Tom, headset on, sitting on an airplane. Don't talk to me on an airplane. But that has recently changed. I like to talk about my book. I like to talk about these other things. There's some marketing in there. But in reality, I'm learning how to have social conversations with people and network, because you'll be shocked what you find out about people, and that there are connections there. The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is really true. That there are some connections somewhere between people that are out there. You just have to be bold enough, just enough to ask the questions of people. And you say, hey, I'd love to be able to talk to you sometime. It is a very rare time where someone says, Tom, can I get some time on your calendar where I won't say this? It may be a week or 2 or 3 out there, but why wouldn't I? So many people have done it for me. I'd love to be able to do that. And if you think about it from the outside, people are willing to help if you're willing to ask. So reach outside of companies that are out there. And you have these postings that are up on the board here for you. You have people that are going to new positions there. When they get in, say, who did you talk to? Who can I? And look at it from, if you're trying to get a position that's similar to what you're doing right now, reach higher. And not necessarily say I want a management position or I want this, but say those are the people I want to talk to, because they're the ones that are going to get you in. And that's how you get the foot in. A lot of times we're dealing with the wrong levels of people. And the other part is we might be trying to go through this door, but in reality the open door is over here. There are connections throughout this entire state that someone somewhere has for you, and there is a connection. There is a connection out there. Good question. What else? So as part of a leadership program, we had to fly down to Charlotte. First morning, I'm working out in the hotel gym. It's about 6 in the morning, and I look over, and there's this guy that looks an awful lot like our CEO. I ended up going to our first meeting, and they said, what we want you to do today is you're going to get 2 things out of this week. Is 1, we want you to broaden your business acumen, and 2, we want you to network. I said, okay. And I said, hey, while I was working out, there was a guy who looked an awful lot like our CEO. And they said, yeah, he works out there a lot. I said, oh, that was his CEO. So the next day I'm working out and running on the treadmill, and I look over here, and there's this guy that looks like the CEO that I now know is the CEO. And I go home, I go to the hotel room, and I call my wife, and I said, the person next to me was the CEO. And she said, did you introduce yourself? I said, no. I said, I have the headset in. I don't want to bother him. I don't like to be bothered when I'm working out. She said, coward. I said, but, and she said, coward. I said, fine. If he's there the next day, which he would be there 3 days in a row, he's the CEO running a very big company, and the opportunity presented itself, I'll introduce myself. Next day, I go down there, I'm running, and it's empty. 10 minutes later, he comes walking in. And he starts working out. He's got a headset on, I have a headset on, opportunity to now present itself. I'm done with my workout, I sit down on a bench, I take my headset off. And he walks in front of me, he takes his headset off, and he's standing right in front of me. Opportunity presented itself.
Your wife had called him?
So I said, I don't underestimate what my wife can do to me. And I said, I'm Tom Dowd. I work for you in the Belfast office. You probably don't know who I am. I'm just kidding. And I said, he had just recently done some interviews with 60 Minutes. I said, we saw you on 60 Minutes. I love the way you represented the company. I just wanted to introduce myself. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Is he going to remember who I am? No. But did I gain a little bit of confidence to be able to network? So I go back to the group now, because this is Wednesday or Thursday. I said, remember you told us we needed to broaden our business acumen. You told us to network. I said, yeah. I said, I went straight to the top.